Twisters leaves out the stars of the original 1996 movie, but one detail teases what happened to Helen Hunt's Joe and Bill Paxton's Bill after Twister. The sequel movie, released in 2024, picks up decades after the events of the first film and recenters the story around a new group of characters. Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt not returning for Twisters, albeit for very different reasons, means that the movie left significant questions about Joe and Bill's fate after they survived an F5 tornado and finally got the Dorothy technology to work. While this is mostly a standalone sequel to the original movie, there are still plenty of Twisters Easter eggs and references to the original for audiences to catch. One of the most direct connections comes in the earliest portions of the film. Kate's team has Dorothy V in Twisters as they test her experimental formula to tame tornadoes. Seeing the familiar tornado machine seems like just a fun callback to the original movie at first. However, its presence is actually a major clue to Joe and Bill's life after Twister. Dorothy V's existence hints at Joe and Bill's success after Twister. Their experiments continued. The fact that Dorothy V exists during Twister's opening scene suggests that Joe and Bill went on to find some success after Oklahoma's devastating tornadoes from 1996. Twister's ending is where they finally managed to make the device work, which was a major development for the scientific community. Bill designed the Dorothy devices to get better readings of tornado activity, so there is more data on how they work, with the hope being that they could make warnings happen 15 minutes before a tornado begins. Once Dorothy finally worked during the F5 tornado, Joe and Bill began talking about the future, including getting grants, finding a bigger lab, and starting to analyze the data. Since another movie about the rekindled couple did not happen, whether they achieved these dreams was unclear. The presence of Dorothy V in Twisters indicates that Joe and Bill did continue their research and built the fifth iteration of Dorothy. This provides a minor glimpse into their lives after surviving the tornado. Why Twisters doesn't fully explain Joe and Bill's life after the original. This wasn't their story. Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton react to a tornado touchdown near their position. Dorothy V's creation is the only update Twisters provides about Joe and Bill's lives, with the movie otherwise opting to ignore the franchise's original leads. Bill Paxton's tragic passing in 2017 ruled out the chances of seeing Bill again in the sequel. Without him, Helen Hunt was also left out, potentially because this would only raise more questions about Bill's status. This helped Twisters keep its focus on the new characters, Deacy Edgar Jones Kate, Glenn Powell's Tyler, and Anthony Ramos Javi. Since they are not directly connected to Joe or Bill, updates on their lives were not natural to include. It would have been possible for the sequel to include some offhand remarks about Oklahoma's previous well-known storm chasers and how they paved the way for the technology and science on display. But those potential connections might have felt cheap to audiences and only remind them further of Joe and Bill's absences. Director Lee Isaac Chung did explain why Helen Hunt isn't in Twisters. He did not like the idea of bringing Joe Harding back in any role that did not include her being an active storm chaser, so she was left out entirely.